Adam, thank you so much for joining us on Northern Vibe. I'm such a fanboy, and so are all the people of Cairns are really keen to hear about a homeboy come good.
Thanks, mate. No, I've got great memories of Cairns, and yeah, it was such an important part of my upbringing, and I think I still retain the fun of Queensland accent. So yeah, I'm very happy to do this.
And mate, we do have one, eh? Like
Yes.
down, anytime I go down south, people kind of like, and I say crikey and stuff like that, and the other lexicon that we've still got up here in North Queensland.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's it doesn't matter how far south I've gone or where I've lived in the world. I think I have the Cairns accent.
The drawl, mate. You got
Yeah,
to talk through your nose. It's got to
yeah,
echo
that's
through the
right. Yeah,
nose,
yeah,
or you're not a North Queenslander. Like,
yeah, 100%, 100%.
so mate, you went to Smithfield High,
Yep,
down to Brizzy Grammar,
yep.
captain cross country. So besides being able to write, you could bit of a runner as well. Came back as a journo to the Cairns Post. Mate, you're a dead set homeboy come good.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about what got you into writing and producing films?
So my parents were both journalists. They met in London. Mum was a magazine writer, and dad was an author, and he wrote for many newspapers in the UK,
Mhm.
and they moved to Cairns. What happened was they had pitched a story. Dad had pitched a story to the Times, and the London Times, uh, about what he called the final frontier, which was far north Queensland. This is in the early 70s. And um, so he came to Cairns, and a real estate agent was showing him around, like all the places, all interesting places and everything. And he said, "There's one last place I want to show you."
Yeah,
And this was
McKern.
1971.
Yeah,
And Mum was pregnant with me at the time.
right.
And so they went up this hill in Stratford,
Yeah.
and at the top of the hill was a house, and the guy came out of the house, and it was Leo McKern. Now, if people are old enough to know, Leo McKern's Rumpole of the Bailey and many TV shows. He was also the old guy in Blue Lagoon, if you remember Blue Lagoon.
Yep.
Um, and he moved to Cairns for a few years because he wanted to get away from it all. But I don't. I think maybe maybe there was he had some problems in Cairns. I don't know what they were. He wanted to get out quickly, and so Dad was just there to interview him, but ended up buying his house. And so I was born a few months later at Calvary, and spent my life there, and spent my life in Cairns, sorry. And I don't know that when I was in Cairns that a career in TV and film awaited. I knew that writing was probably a thing, that I was going to follow in my parents' footsteps as a writer.
Did you find it a struggle, or is it just something that came naturally to you?
No, what came naturally to me was journalism, because I think second generation kids, if your parents do something and then you you follow in their footsteps, I think those kids find it easier. You see that all the time in acting. You see, people whose kids have gone into acting after after their parents have forged a path, and those kids end up doing very well. I see that all the time. You somehow imbue the knowledge from your parents. It's really interesting. All those conversations at the dinner table and things like that. You kind of you have this kind of store of knowledge. Plus, you're probably genetically predisposed to it as well. No, so that side of things was easy for me, but making the jump from journalism to TV and film was the hardest thing. As I say, I wrote a book last year, and in the book I talk about how I spent how I put aside $4,000 or $8,000 every year to make short films. Um, from my journalism wage to actually make short films. And so in a way that was my film school, and that's how I got into the industry. But short films is very different to writing screenplays. And there's the rule in journalism is you put all the interesting stuff up the top, and the rule in screenwriting is you put all the interesting stuff at the end. So it's kind of that you have to unlearn a whole bunch of stuff. when you make that transition.
All right. So if you were going to encourage, and mate, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've interviewed just recently, I've interviewed a couple of up and coming young filmmakers. And there's a real little vibe going on in Cairns right now because we've had a few movies made up here. There's been another local movie made called Lindy Lou.
Yeah.
Travis Bain's always floating around here doing stuff as well. He's encouraged a few. I interviewed last week a young fella who's just goes and grabs phones, goes and makes movies, and he's winning all.
Awesome.
He's someone to watch in every sense of the phrase. I hope you'll pardon me for making the pun.
No, it's good. Well, I mean, okay, so what's good about Cairns is the light. It's not. I mean, sometimes you get rained on when you're filming, but there's that really warm tropical light that I think suits cinematography, and also you've got this amazing natural landscape that you can call upon at any time. So the fact that when I was growing up, stop me if I remember, but when I was growing up and you watched Australian television, the Australian landscape was depicted as the bush that you see between Sydney and Melbourne, essentially, right? And Cairns people just didn't relate to that. The flora that we kind of grew up in is just so different.
Yeah.
And spectacular and amazing, and so it wasn't until I kind of moved south that I went, oh yeah, this is where they just filmed everything. So the idea that you say that people are filming more stuff up north is brilliant, because when I remember The Thin Red Line was one of the first productions up there, The Island of Dr. Moreau with
Don't mention The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Don't mention the war.
I know, it was one of the first ones, and that put everyone off for a while. So yeah, and I remember I had a girlfriend at the time who worked for the Douglas Times, and she always used to get all the celebrities to, she'd always be on the celebrity hunt, on 4 Mile Beach, and Leslie Nielsen, who was in Flying High, he was always there, Cindy Crawford, all these celebrities that used to go to Port Douglas. But I'm just so vibed that they're doing that up there. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, mate, and keep an eye on the place, because if you want to come.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a medium-sized fish now. If you come, I'd suggest pond-wise, you'd be dominating the pool. But what the people who are scribbling, and like I said, there's a real growing community up here. What advice, words of encouragement would you give them?
So now you got the difference between what was going on when I was growing up and what's happening now is you've got access to all these screenplays online. So whether you want to write movies or you want to write half-hour comedies or 1-hour dramas, I'd be just getting on and reading a script a day and working out how they format it, because it's all about screenwriting is different from writing a novel or writing a poem. It's very rules based. Now you can be very creative within those rules, but audiences and studios and producers and networks, they don't like it when you veer too far off, because they've worked out a formula for a reason. This is how people want to consume their television. You can react to it as an artist and you can go, fuck that, I'm an anarchist, I'll do whatever I want. Yeah, sure. You're not going to make that much money if you do that. But if you want to make money, you do need to work out how to tell those stories, and you need to make your screenplay look like a professional screenplay, or else people won't read it. So get online, read something every day. Look at your favorite TV show. You go, okay, my favorite TV show might be Lost. All right, go and read those Lost scripts. They're all there. Just read them. and soak it in. See how that. Just be aware of every element along the way. I don't want to. I could really go into the weeds here, but be really aware of every element along the way of how they actually write those screenplays, and then try and use that structure for your own ideas.
Great. All right, and let's. I really look, mate. I so want to talk about all of your, all the cool stuff you're doing, and you're going to London soon, which makes me up to something, Zwar.
No, do you know what? I'm visiting my wife. She's directing something over there. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty innocent.
All right. No worries. But mate, look, I want to get you to tell us about Squinters and Lowdown and Mr. Black, and of course Wilfred, which I absolutely love. But really, mate, really quickly, I want to have a quick look at because that's, your writing skill stack is pretty big. And I've been on your website, your Substack, and mate, I love it. It's because it's kind of witty. You're getting that, if I can use the language, you're getting that North Queensland smartass coming through there. But the article that you kind of like running there is this one that I got to say really pinged me.
Yeah.
This fella asked about all of these people tweet their favorite insults and said, right, really northern
English. Yeah, because he's American, that guy. So he's kind of like, what, how do you insult someone in England? And so all these people wrote in and told them their favorite insults. I've got this website. So it's called The Kicker, and it's celebrating vintage comedy. The comedy could be from last week or from long ago, but essentially it's a bit of a nostalgia trip, and looking at the funny stuff from our past, which people kind of forget about pretty quickly. So I'm trying to like preserve it.
Yeah, like the dying art of writing hilarious headlines. What about, I kicked Burning Terror so hard in the balls that I tore whatever it was.
Yeah, that I tore a tendon in my foot. I think it is. Yeah, no, we used to write some pretty good headlines at the Cairns Post. I remember, like, Mum and Dad had just got back from London, and you know how cold that is there, and they just arrived in Cairns, and the first headline they'd seen on the front page of the Cairns Post, and it was a 25 degree, maybe a 23 degree day in Cairns, and the headline was "Cold Snap Hits Cairns." And I remember that. But what happens after time, as the locals will tell you, your blood thins, and it actually does feel cold when it's like 18 degrees.
It does. And mate, I spent a year in China teaching English. So if you meet any Chinese kids that swear a lot, have terrible North Queensland accents, and talk, it's probably me. So I'm looking at the headlines, and this is in the early 2000s. So this is around 2003. And I jumped on the clunky old internet back then. I'm looking at world headlines, right? So I'm looking up the Jerusalem Post. I'm looking up New York Times, London Times, Washington Post, all these kind of like, big newspapers. And it's all like newsworthy kind of stuff, like coppers were getting killed in Israel, or, some soldiers have been blown up or something or other, some corruption scandal in New York. There was something dodgy going on with the municipal government in London, and like all this like really big stuff. And I'm like, wow. Ooh. And then I look up there because it was a Sunday. So I look up the Sunday Mail, the Queensland newspaper. Headline: Backyard Pool Blitz. And I'm like, you see that state? You see that state?
What was the story with like that people not having fences around their pools or something?
And I'm like, it wouldn't be anywhere else. Like, like it was kind of like, head slapping. But like,
I thought you were going to say something like, Darren Lockyer, pulls out of Origin.
Yeah.
It's a parochial. Well, we've got it really good. I do want to amend something that I said to you earlier. I think so. When I was telling you, you should be reading screenplays and everything, and I think you should be reading screenplays. But also I think you should be just making stuff. So writing it and then just making it. I think that's one of the quickest ways you're going to learn. how to be a good writer is by making things and seeing how things work and how they don't work.
And on that, should people be going, and hold your train of thought? And I'm sorry, it's just that
That's right.
it's going on in my head, and this is so cool. Thank you so much for chatting to me.
No worries.
Everybody kind of thinks that, oh no, you've got to get validation from one of the big studios or at least a local TV show or stuff like that. Are you of that opinion, or are you really liking these like little independent homemade films that admittedly probably don't have the quality of what's your feeling on it? Do you really, should people just be doing it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because look, if you're going to go into the cinema space, it's look, you might be lucky. You might write a screenplay. The problem, it's trying to get my thoughts in order. The problem is, if you write, you could write something really good, right? That no one's interested in for whatever reason, whatever commercial reason, or whatever, because you've got to find a producer who not only thinks they can make money out of that, but and sell it, but also likes the topic, So it's a lot of variables in getting a film up, and they're making fewer and fewer films every year. Then you go into TV, and for TV, you do need to package things with, kind of well-known actors and well-known directors, and it needs to have the politics of whatever the buyer is, that you're actually selling to. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of hoops to jump through. If you're not established, then I would make my own thing and become established that way. That's what I did. That's the only way I can think of doing it. And because I wasn't in the kind of in the tent of people who are getting money from whatever investment bodies are out there. I was a complete outsider, and I forced my way in by just making stuff. So that's the only thing I can suggest. And obviously now it's a lot easier too. You're talking about the guys with the iPhones and everything like that. Just do it. Get some. I'm sure there's some some actors that you like floating around Cairns. Get them in, put them in your film. Make a short one first, then make them longer. And what ends up happening is you send them out to film festivals, you put them online, and you start getting a community together, and people start taking notice. Especially once you start getting a community together, people start taking notice, and so that would be the way. Tactically, that's the way I would play it.
Yeah, that's a fan base basically, and
yeah,
that you did that so well with Wilfred. Like me and my mates used to sit down. Mate, we love that. We sit there drinking tubes.
It's good. That's what it's meant. That was that was what it's meant for. Yeah, totally. I mean, no one we did take it out to networks and before we actually made a pilot of our own. And I mean, the problem when you're pitching things is everyone interprets the idea in a different way.
Yeah.
All right. So they were interpreting it as like what do you mean a guy in a dog suit? What do you mean? It's like, is he doing dog stuff? Is he? No. It's just, it was very hard to explain what we had in mind, but Jason and I knew what it was, and so we just had to make it.
Yeah.
And we made the short film, and that did well, and then we used the money from we won some film stock and editing time and things like that from the prize pool at Tropfest and St Kilda Film Festival, etc. And we just made a pilot based on that, and then we wrote scripts off our own bat, and we're just lucky to sell it. But we had all that kind of IP already there. It was just we shot a whole lot of stuff, so no one was in any doubt about what they were buying.
Yeah. And mate, with funding these things, like being Australians, this is one thing that annoys me. As much as I love the backyard pool blitz, we live in paradise, and having the capacity to take things for granted, which is a good thing. But one of our one of the real downsides of our national character is this infinite capacity to take things for granted.
Yeah.
Is that, and we do, like, as funny as it is, it's kind of dangerous in some ways.
Yeah.
But we also, one of our other things that we do is we look to government. So anytime something is funding, it's like, oh, it's got to be government funding. And like, having worked in the government, something that really resonated with me, what you were saying a second ago, is like the political stuff. I mean that in every sense of the word. So not just like who's getting on with who in the industry, that political stuff, but like who are you voting for and what your worldview. Like, tell you that is what they're thinking. And these things matter. If you go to government funding, they care about what your worldview is, who you're voting for, and that stuff is central. So if you get out of that and you just got an artistic vision, and I understand that every film and every story comes from a certain worldview.
Yeah.
But like, if you just what would you suggest to people? Like, how can they raise funds? Like, are there just, do you approach big car companies? Do you approach, Bunnings? Do you approach, like, what do you do to raise a quid if you want to stay out of the, or if there's no way you're going to access that kind of funding because you're not talking about whatever it is that's flavor, the cause du jour.
Yeah, look, I don't know. It's a little bit, it's more of a kind of a question for a non-writing producer. When I say non-writing producers, they're the ones that kind of get the money. So you can get investors, but you need to make sure that they get the right tax breaks. So there's things like the producer offset, and there's a version of 10BA, which is a tax break. So you need to have all these things in place, and then you also need to have really good accounting situation for whatever revenue you get for the film, so the investors get paid off first. So you need to have that all ready when you go to an investor. It could be a dentist, it could be, as you say, a car company or whatever. But in the very first instance, I would just do things off my own bat. Get a mount for your iPhone and a recording device and lights, and just do it. Cut it together yourself. But if you cut together something really good, you can cut down a 2-minute version, like a trailer, and then you can show people the real version, the longer version. And you can get money based on that on the back end. You can also get sales based on that, and everything is kind of changing dramatically. So, so you're now looking at, so you could presumably go to Netflix or Stan with your 2-minute reel of what you shot, and they can say, hey, we're interested. We'd like to see the whole thing. And if they like the whole thing, then maybe they'll put in money to actually get it finished. And what I mean by get it finished is because you've presumably edited it all together. They'll do it, you'll get some money to do a grade. You'll get some money to get some music, and a good sound mix. So that's, so that's what you can. So that would be really good for you at the back end. You also get the money to pay all your actors.
Yeah.
Anyone that you use. So if you made a sale to Netflix or Stan or Apple or Disney, or Paramount or any of those places, then suddenly everyone gets paid. So
it goes from a cool love project to something that people have got like a bit of a, they got a quid in their back pocket. So
that's it.
Happy as pigs in poo. Yeah.
So you want to make sure I didn't expect to be talking about this today, so my thoughts aren't really set up. But you want to get a contract which you can get online of deferred payments for all your cast and crew. So should this project get up, you'll get compensated with equity rates or something like that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, mate. Look, I'm sorry to have gone off on that tangent.
No, you're right. I'm not. I want to make sure I give people the right information. That's all.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Yeah. But that does help. It means that if you go, okay, here's your, as an actor, you're going to get deferred payments. That's not, actors are happy to do it, but then you get your shot, your film shot. And if it doesn't make if you don't make a sale, no harm, no foul. You do it again. I promise you, your next one will be better.
Yeah. Before we go into, I want you to talk about all of the projects that you've done in the past. But I really, I just want to go back and have a quick chat about the because we were talking about that. Rob Delaney asked the people of Great Britain to tweet their favourite insults.
Yeah,
some great Australian insults, like some ripper ones that you've heard.
Yeah. Look, I'm a big fan of fuck knuckles, great. I mean, that's the traditional one. Flog. I did get people to tweet in what they thought was good. We got Muppet, Mole. I love that in Big Brother where the woman goes, "Game on, Moles. Game on, Moles." So yeah, they're my favorite. What are yours? What are you?
Mate, see, I spent a bit of time in Cape York and the Torres Straits, so I've worked a lot with Indigenous people, and they have the Cape insults are the best.
Really?
Oh yeah. I seriously want to do like a dictionary of Indigenous Cape insults and Torres Strait Islander, because there's a linguistic difference and there's a cultural difference between the people.
Yeah.
I'll start in the north. Like a great Torres Strait Island insult is gatawaru, which literally translates as shallow swimming turtle. So you'll have these turtle, like if a turtle's a bit wimpy, it doesn't kind of like want to go into deep water because it's frightened of sharks and stuff like that. It's a shallow swimming turtle. It's like a bit kind of, so that's, I just love
it. Reminds me of Keating calling Costello a low altitude flyer.
Yeah, that kind of, assholes, conga line of butt lickers or whatever it is that they've got. But I can't actually, unfortunately, I can't use a lot of the proper Cape Murray ones. But you'll get stuff like Big Hole and which is a really favourite one up there. But because sexual relations among Indigenous people, like there's kind of a strict hierarchy of like who you traditionally anyway, like it's all broken, a lot of it's broken down. But it's like, so there were poison relationships that you couldn't have. And if you breached a poison relationship, it's a bit of a big deal. So to accuse someone of breaching a poison relationship is a serious insult. So how that translates into English is like you'll be an uncle fucker, or so it's not an MF, it's a UF.
So what's the poison relationship? Like, so people that you can't be in relationships with.
Yeah. So there's poison relationships, like traditionally speaking, and look, it all went through totems and skin. So like, if you're a crocodile and you married a dingo, I'm just making this up,
Yeah.
Well, you would have your firstborn would be so all these kind of skins went down through there. That's the way. Like, I mean, yes, it gave you that relationship, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of. And I'm not misty-eyed about these things either, incidentally. But a lot of ways, it was genuinely beautiful. So it would give you a link with that animal, and obviously a link with the land and all that kind of stuff. But it also gave you an identity within the group. So it's like, oh, well, this is my relationship to that person, and this is my relationship to that person.
Yeah.
Yes, I can shag that person. No, I can't shag that person. Like, you'd know straight away. It's like, you talk to them, it's like, oh, what skin are you? Oh, I'm this skin. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, maybe we could get together.
And who can, like, crocodiles and dingoes can't be? Or
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like. I'm kind.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well,
right about
it's just from working in the Cape.
Yeah. I mean, definitely that's a thing now that you need to. If you have any Indigenous characters, maybe not even lead characters, but substantial characters in your film or TV show, you definitely need to co-write it with an Indigenous person. So you can't, the old rabbit-proof fence or something like that. That would have to be written by an Indigenous person now.
I get that, but like the problem with that is, and you know, I know from Adam, you know, the biblical Adam, but like
Oh yeah.
that like I understand where that's coming from, and that respect thing, like having lived and worked up there, and you know, having a lot of friends, it's like I genuinely, I don't say this lightly, I think I have an understanding of that.
Yeah.
My problem with that is this, like, first, a lot of these things are like they change for the area. Like the people of Arakoon have very, you know, it's more the same than not, but they have different rules and different interpretations of the rules and different degrees of impact on other religions than, say, the people of Lockhart River, to compared, say, to the people of the Torres Strait. So it kind of, I mean, so you could say, oh, hey, look, you know, co-wrote this with this people, and you get all these other Indigenous people going, that is complete and utter codswallop. That's not representative.
100%.
And everyone is right. You know what I mean? Everyone is correct. Like no one is lying.
Yeah.
And when you go deeper, I mean, my concern with stuff like this, and I think about this a lot, and you've probably picked it up, is that where are we going with this? Like, is this going to mean that like you have to be Greek to make something to do with the Iliad? Like to an interpretation of the Aeneid, you'd have to be Italian.
Look, I think it's probably going to go further than I think it's going to go further before it goes backwards, because you know that now it's coming to the point where it's that old joke essentially. Now you need to have gay people playing gay characters and blah blah blah. So essentially, do you need to be a murderer to play a murderer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, look. The thing is with generally white people running these government bodies with Indigenous support, but generally these like do-gooding white people running these bodies that they're in a way they are hampered by their need to be seen to be good, to be doing good, and look, I like to stay right out of the system if I can, because I just want to be away from the politics, the fact, because politics comes down to fashion a lot of the time too. It's like what's in fashion, who's in fashion, I can tell you who's out of fashion right now. People who look like this.
Guys talking to reprobate podcasters in North Queensland.
That's right. Yeah.
Doing it for the team. That's
look. But you've got to be resourceful all the time. I mean, but that's not even. I mean, whatever I think is probably irrelevant. Even. You go in, and this is the whole thing about movie making and screenwriting and acting and all of those things. You just go in and out of favor all the time. And, I was listening to an interview with Ben Elton yesterday, and he said, look, 80s and 90s, I was killing it. I was everywhere. Everyone wanted a piece of me. And then in the 2000s, no one did. No one wanted anything to do with me, and that's fine. I had my shot. Now I'm back again, and it's literally you can be quite debilitating, and you can kind of look to external reasons why your career is not going great, and you can say, oh, I'm not diverse, or I'm not, there's a thing on the screen, or one of the film funding bodies has got, what sexuality are you, and everyone's ticking bisexual these days because no one wants to look straight, because straight people aren't getting any work. I mean, which is not true, but it's suddenly, that shouldn't be there. But at the same time, I can't worry about that shit, because it ebbs and flows. That'll go one day, and then there'll be some other stupid thing there that you have to tick. So I've just got to kind of go back to what I was saying to you before, and just make it myself. If I want to make something, build it, and they will come. Don't go with your cap in hand everywhere, looking for approval or money. Just make it yourself, and I promise you will never regret it.
That is so cool, and that's really, really inspirational.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, anytime I've done anything off my own bat, I haven't regretted it. It's always done something for me.
Tell us about, because like I'm a Wilfred fanboy.
Yeah.
For those people out there, and if you don't know what we're talking about, shame on you. Okay. You need to get a few friends, you need to get some tubes, you need to flop in front of the TV, watch Wilfred, all right?
That's right.
But if you're one of those, if you're one of those people, can you tell people about Wilfred, and about, without too many giveaways there, but like what it is, where they can find it, and
yeah,
write a play about it, Doc.
I'll have a look at where you can find it. It's probably best on iTunes. So it was so it's about two guys, both fighting for the affections of a beautiful woman, but one of those guys just happens to be a dog. And the thing is, everyone sees Wilfred as a dog, except Adam, who sees him as a guy in a dog suit. The reason why, in my mind, why he sees him as a guy in a dog suit is because he's just so intimidated by him. Because, if he was just a dog, he wouldn't find him so intimidating. And it's based on a situation where I went on a date with a girl and she had a dog, and it was a half dingo, half Labrador, and I was throwing the ball to the dog. The dog was loving it. And then by the time we went to the bedroom, the dog jumped on the bed and it was just like growling at me all night. And then I started in my mind, I started anthropomorphizing the dog, like, and going, "What are you doing here? What do you think you're gonna do to my missus?" So that's when so that's, and then the next day I went to Jason and we talked about it, and Jason and I had always improvised these things, and that's Jason again. Yeah. And so that's, we wrote the short film in about an hour. And then we made it within a month. I paid for it. This paid cost about $4,000, and we entered it into Trop Fest because I'd already entered about 3 or 4 films into Trop Fest. And please know that again, that harks back to what I was saying before. It's very easy to be discouraged by your first go at it, and you're going. It's literally like playing golf for the first time or swimming for the first time or anything like that. It's very difficult to get good at being a filmmaker. And if you do a really good one in your first go, then don't actually think you're a genius straight away. You could have got lucky because they're really hard to do. So we made the film, put it in a Trop Fest, and as I said, it was the 3rd or 4th film I put in a Trop Fest, and it got through. And I just remember thinking that was the best night, because in those days Trop Fest was a big festival. It was like 100,000 people in the Domain in Sydney would watch it, and then there'd be these satellite festivals all around the world, and then the next thing we did was we made a feature film called Rats and Cats. Again, it was off our own bat, but the director mortgaged his house to actually help pay for that.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
I think I just misheard you then.
Yeah, he mortgaged his house to make the film Rats and Cats.
Wow.
Don't feel still got it? He owns a lot of property. It's a good story.
Has he still got the house? I got to ask.
Oh yeah, mate. Yeah, he's a wealthy guy. He's now, he owns heaps of stuff now. He invested wisely. Let's put it that way.
Good man.
Yeah, I mean, I remember him telling us a very sad story, at lunch one day about how he grew up in an orphanage, but it turned out his mum owned the orphanage. So no, it's fine. Yeah, so then after that we made the pilot of Wilfred, and the Comedy Channel were interested, in it. So Jason and I then wrote all 8 episodes of the series off our own bat. We weren't paid for it, which is really unusual. You know, most people are paid for to write episodes of television, and because it's a huge whack out of your life. You know, that's a 6-month job, and so we did that, and Comedy Channel said, just before we were about to send them through, the Comedy Channel said, no, we're not interested anymore. We've moved on. And so we sent it to SBS, who'd already seen the pilot and had quite firmly said to us, we don't think there's a series there. We think it's funny and everything, but we don't think there's a series there. So we sent them the scripts, and they went, okay, we see a series. And suddenly we're up. It was just a miracle. But that came from me just putting my money where my mouth was. And you know, it's cheaper now. You wouldn't need $4,000 to do it now, but because I needed to do, I needed film stock, and I needed lights, and I needed sound equipment, whereas now that's all very portable and easy to do. So put your money where your mouth is. Have faith in your ideas. Don't worry if the first one doesn't work. Keep going. Something will pop up.
And speaking of that, so after Wilfred, I mean, you've done all this other work. You've done Squinters, you've done Lowdown, you've done Mr. Black, the Agony series, which was kind of cool, and something that was a bit out of kilter for who you kind of normally are. It was Underarm. So I'll get you to talk about those, whichever one you want to talk about first, and let's chat about that.
Yeah, you're right. So what happened was, after Wilfred, I formed a production company with Amanda Brocci and Nicole Minchin, and we made Lowdown. Amanda and I were the creators of Lowdown, and she directed it, and that was set in the dying days of of newspapers, of tabloid journalism, where pretty much every story had to be a shock and amaze, or else the newspaper would close down. And that did really well. That played all around the world, and we're very proud of that. It was and then that show set up this production company, and the production company, we made all the Agony series from that. The Agony series was me interviewing some of Australia's funniest and wisest celebrities, I guess, and just asking them, every series had a different topic. Like, there was one series about manners, there was another series about the mind, there was another series about dating and relationships, and I loved doing that, and I loved but by 2015 or 20, we decided to close the company down and move to LA. And when I was in LA, I worked on a few shows over there, but also came back to do Squinters and Mr. Black. And Squinters was, it's called Squinters because it's set in Sydney, and it's literally people who all work at the same company driving to work in their separate cars and then driving home from work at the end of the day. So it was essentially all set in cars. The reason why it's called Squinters is because if you come from the West and you're driving into the city, and the sun's in your eyes, and as you're driving home, the sun's in your eyes. And so it was kind of a pejorative term for snobs in Sydney. If you came from the West, they call you Squinters.
Rather than a Westie. I got a mate from Campbelltown. He goes, "Yeah, I'm a Westie."
Yeah, I'm a Westie. Yeah. Well, he's a squinter too, probably. He doesn't commute. And Mr. Black is essentially one of those shows about a guy who it was actually meant to be for an older guy, but we ended up getting Steve Curry to play. But it was an older guy who just hates his girlfriend, who hates his daughter's boyfriend, wants him dead, in a way, So that's it. I had a lot of fun making that. So in between all that, I did make 2 documentaries. One was about Bodyline, the 1931 32 Test series in Australia, where England pretty much cheated and bowled bowled illegally, I guess, or would become illegal at the batsman's body, and it was all designed to curb Bradman. And the climax of that show was me, because they had no helmet in those days, and you're facing bowling that's 145 plus k's an hour at your head. And the climax of that was me facing Brett Lee in the same gear that they wore in those days.
No, thanks.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And Underarm was a more conventional documentary, just about Australia, the chap Trevor Chapper bowling underarm, because New Zealand had 6 runs to actually tie with Australia in the last ball, and instead of just bowling a normal ball, they bowled it along the ground. So they got 6.
I'm still ashamed about that, and Kiwis who still tease us about that too. I mean, the Points cheated at body line, and that was kind of underhanded. But oh my god, we took the underhanded, unsporting thing to another level with that. Oh my god, that was just shame.
And I made it with a bunch of Kiwis, so that was interesting.
Yeah, and like, what can you say? Like, you know how a German felt making a film.
Yeah,
totally. A whole bunch of balls.
You know you're in the wrong.
You may a copper.
And yours the baddies. Yeah. So look, I do like to do. Look, I do go from fiction to non-fiction a lot in my writing and my work. I can't ever let, for me, non-fiction is important. I do love telling real stories. So, that's why you see those you see kind of comedy on one side, or narrative on one side, and non-narrative on the other. Sorry, factual on the other.
And I've noticed you've said, I really like doing this. Obviously you love it, and, you're doing it because you're loving it. And kudos to you finding, doing something you love. But without going into the details, mate, is this something that someone can make a quid out of? Like in today's market? Because it's hard. Like, it's a saturated market and stuff out there. Can someone make a quid out of doing this, or is it always going to be a bit of a hobby / love project?
Yeah, you can make a quid out of it. But there are going to be ups and downs. It really does depend. You've got to be lucky. What I would say to people is, like, if you're coming up and you want to be an actor or a writer or a director or a producer, is you've got to get good at those things. You've got to get very good at whatever your chosen vocation is. All right, so that's a given. And whatever way you want to do that, whether you want to make stuff and train up that way, or you want to go to film school and train up that way, whatever. So say you're all good. We're all kind of good. We're all heaps at this level. Then what kind of breaks you through is networking. Now, when I say networking, you're in Australia, so you do not want to be a dickhead about it. You've got to be very subtle in the way you network. If someone feels that you're networking them or you're kind of playing them, they'll run a mile. So you've got to be very careful about that, but you've got to do it all at the same time. In LA, it's completely different. In LA, you can literally say, hey, I want to talk to you because I see career advancement in getting to know you. You can literally be that blunt, but you can't be that blunt in Australia. They'll just run a mile. And the third thing is just being lucky. But you can't be lucky unless you've done the hard work and you're in the game. So
yeah,
I
want you to hold that train of thought, but I really want to talk about this because, like, there was, without going into precise details of what it was, my family and I, we achieved something, and I've got a friend who was and still is a really close family friend, and she said to us one day, she goes, "Oh, you guys are just so lucky." And we went, "Well, what do you mean by that?" She goes, "Well, you were lucky that this happened to you." And I'll go, "Look, I don't think we're talking about the same thing here. Like, if you pick 6 numbers and 2 supplementaries and you are like $1 million, like that's oh my god,
Yeah.
But the reason that we were successful in this thing without going precisely what it was is we did exactly what you said. Well, first we worked hard. I mean, we worked
Yeah.
really hard. Second, we made mistakes, big mistakes.
Yeah.
And actually, we actually came very close to failure, like seriously close to catastrophic failure. And if this project had failed, it would have been genuinely catastrophic for our family. And third, like we listened to people. Fourth, we were reading and studying. So there was just like, we were just completely and utterly obsessed by it. Now, was there a degree of luck in so much as like an asteroid didn't hit or like, yeah, I mean, yes, but like there genuinely seems to be people out there. And I think I genuinely think it's part of the Australian thing too. Like when they see success, because Australians, because we're such an egalitarian people, when they see success, there's always that tall poppy jealousy thing. And it's something that it holds us back nationally. It's there's a reason the Yanks kick our asses in almost everything. And it's smarter than us. It's a cultural thing. Because they've got that, you go, and they encourage each other. I've seen it. Like I went to America for a kind of study touring thing for a while. And mate, it's, even in the area that I was in at the time, which was like, it was in justice administration. Like that's not, like that's a bureaucratic thing.
Yeah.
So these people they were kind of like encourage each other and trying to, and don't get me wrong, like there was, of course, like with any thing, you get people trying to push each other down, you get, where there's a hierarchy of stuff. But like there was the general environment, I would say, was like encouragement. There's like this idea that you could and should. And we don't have that. And people would get accolades. I suppose linking it back to that, there's like people would say, no, you achieved this. Whereas Australians would go, you're just lucky. That's bullshit. I reckon that holds us back, mate.
Oh, for sure. So the thing is, if you're in any situation that's small, like say you're part of a little theatre company, and you're competing against Joe and Jill, the other actors for the roles and everything, then your focus is on the smaller the pool, the more everyone's like at each other's throats. And Australia is a pretty small pool, whereas the Yanks is, there's 350 million people there. They know that they need each other. It's also competitive, and they've realised that the best way to succeed is to be positive. Well, there's nothing holding you back anymore. Like when I was there, it was distance. You had to move away if you wanted a life in an industry that was film and television or something like that, or journalism. You had to leave. There was a lot of great artists and writers of literature up there, but they didn't necessarily need to be anywhere. I mean, they could just send their stuff to the publisher, or but in my day, you had to leave. Now you don't. So I would just be making as much stuff as I could, not be fearful of taking the plunge, getting a camera, and just shooting something, and then editing it together. I mean, literally, most people have the facilities to be able to do that now. And I think, just do it, get your stuff out there. And by the way, you've got such beautiful, as I said at the start, you've got beautiful light, you've got beautiful landscape, you've got a whole lot of great actors now. There's nothing holding you back.
Just do it.
We played golf at Half Moon Bay in Yorkeys Knob, and I was at Palm Cove. I was at the Cairns Lifesavers Nippers at Palm Cove, and then I transitioned to Ellis Beach, which is a controversial thing to do.
Oh, so, yeah.
And all that cross country and stuff. I started off running in the Cairns Roadrunners and Cairns Triathlon with Brad Bevan. Brad Bevan was the guy at the time. If you ever get a chance to interview Jimmy Marr, he was his dad was so influential in junior cricket in Cairns, and Jimmy Marr ended up captaining Queensland and
played Jimmy
Marr, Maher.
Okay.
He captained Queensland and played probably 20 or so one-day internationals for Australia. And I used to open a batting with him in, my junior cricket club. He'd be on 100 and I'd be on 3.
Well, at least you were still there, mate. You're in the game.
I was in the game. You see, that's the thing, you know, it was you had all these, you had a lot of people that you knew were going to go places, and and they did. It was a really supportive arts community, and I hope it's, you know, I'm sure it still exists, because it, you know, the the creative community in Cairns was what got me going. And you know, I did the Stedfords, did all the junior sport. There was so many things for me to do, and I'm, you know, and I'm really grateful for all those opportunities.